Bat for Lashes, The Dream of Delphi, album review, let's chat about it. Hey friends, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning, here tonight to chat about this latest album from Miss Natasha Khan, aka Bat for Lashes, a modern standout in art pop and indie pop for me. Actually, a lot of her early records are big reason why I do what I do here today. A lot of them really inspired me to dive deeper into the sort of artsier realm of indie. And at first, I did take some time to kind of warm up to her music. Her debut album, Fur and Gold, I mean, still to this day, it's just not an album for me, really, especially when it comes to the ballads on this album. There are some great ideas, but man, those ballads, I mean, let's just say Natasha has grown a little since then. However, I did stick around because I was curious, and her follow-up album, Two Sons, was a much more impressive album and just a genuinely huge artistic leap. The tracks on this album, whether it be the singles like Sleep Alone or Daniel, or some of the deep cuts like Glass, I mean, this thing was just such an immensely colorful and passionate art pop record that was just so creative and so exciting to see, and she only kept growing over the next couple of years. I also really did love The Haunted Man. I just thought that this album just had such a unique sound to it. It was a much synthier album. There was definitely some Peter Gabriel worship throughout this thing, but most of it was really well done. Now, her follow-up album, The Bride, a lot of people were kind of lukewarm on this record, and it did take me some time to warm up to as well, especially narrative-wise. I mean, there are some moments late in the album that really do lose me, but it was far from a bad album, but it still is a sort of low point in Natasha's discography. However, I feel like her follow-up to that, the Lost Girls album, was a lot more interesting. This showed Natasha kind of going back to her art pop roots, but bringing in a whole lot of synthesizers. And it's something that she did on The Haunted Man quite a bit, but this time around it was a much more cinematic sound. Think early M83. Now, it's been a few years, but I'm always curious to see what Natasha is cooking up. And leading up to this thing, she released a slew of singles. A lot of them were very impressive, and I'm happy to say that I do believe that, as a whole, this thing is her most consistent record since The Haunted Man. The hype is real, at least it is for me. With The Dream of Delphi, this album's intro, its title track, it is a stunning album intro. The synth work here is fantastic. It just gives this album and this title track such a sort of like a Twilight starry-eyed backdrop. Add in some haunted vocals and a serious dose of drama. You have a great intro and a hell of a single too. And yeah, it's not the most urgent or explosive intro, but something about this just grips me at my core and reminds me of what made Bat for Lashes so impressive a decade ago. The harp is a really nice touch, and when that beat pops in eventually, it is just stunning. Also, shout outs to Mary Lattimore, who did a lot of composition work on this record. Always great to hear from her. There's also a lot of sort of nods to Neoclassical on this album. Take, for example, A Christmas Day. Something about this track just grips me at my core, just warms my bones. This track just has such a sense of wonder and nostalgia and sweet memories to it, as well as a little mystery, and just the playing throughout this track is absolutely just so light on the ears and so charming. Yeah, it's far from just a sort of toss-away 2-minute interlude. Letter to My Daughter, I've loved it since it dropped as a single. The twinkling synth work just plays alongside of Natasha's very lush, very strong vocals really nicely. And yeah, as far as this album goes, it is one of the more stripped down moments here, and that might be an issue for some. It's not exactly Bat for Lashes' most immediate work. A lot of these tracks you do have to sit with, but this just has such a serenity and a genuine beauty to it that I haven't heard in a while. It is an absolutely stunning ballad that makes you realize just how much Natasha has grown as an artist over the years. And At Your Feet is absolutely stunning. I mean, like I said, Natasha plays a lot with the sounds of Neoclassical as far as her music goes on this album, and this is a great example of it. The playing on this track, the piano playing, is absolutely stunning. For just a really no bullshit, just straight up modern classical track, this is gorgeous. And let me tell you, this is far from just a toss away interlude. It almost lasts 4 minutes, but Natasha put so much heart and emotion into this. By the time that her harmonies pop in, it is absolutely immaculate. Now, I do have 2 issues with this album. For one, oh God, I just feel feel like this thing is so short. I mean, this is her first work in like 5 years, and it's only 10 tracks and barely over 30 minutes. Yeah, this definitely could have used another couple of tracks. However, one thing that I also am sad to report is some of the later nods to neoclassical don't really come off as well. Like the midwives have left. After hearing At Your Feet, I was so ready to hear some more music in this vein from Natasha. But this track has a lot of the same sounds, but so much less interesting. It's very dreary, it's got a lot of atmosphere and emotion once again, but all of these ideas sound like leftovers. And sadly, I have a lot of the same feelings on Her First Morning. Compared to some of the other tracks here that are actually really beautiful, this just seems rehashed. Also, really have to point this out, this track doesn't progress at all. And up to this point, Natasha's production, which she's handled mostly by herself, has come off really great and made the music of this album sound really bold. Here, this track just sounds really flimsy. Yeah, so it is a little disappointing in that respect. And like I said, I do wish this was a little bit longer. And it's a real shame because the material here that is good is really good. I would still say this is one of her more consistent recordings since The Haunted Man. Home, I've loved it since it dropped as a single. I mean, Natasha Khan using auto-tune from a distance sounds nightmarish, especially on a more subtle track like this. But it is really intoxicating and meditative and incredibly heartfelt. Yeah, it's absolutely breathtaking. And Breaking Up is one of my favorite tracks here. It's a full instrumental. It reminds me a lot of Vampires from Lost Girls. It's a very synthy, nostalgic interlude with just a real great sense of drama and cinematic edge to it. A heavy dose of mystery as well. I mean, just like the last couple of projects that Natasha has put out, she's really good at putting together interludes that pack a punch and are far more than just an afterthought. I really do love Delphi dancing as well. The continued use of these big, bulky synths is really exciting for me. And listen, a lot of these tracks here, you gotta sit with them. These aren't exactly the most explosive tunes you're gonna hear all year. A lot of this is some very graceful art pop. But the results here are gorgeous, and by the end of this track, it actually gets into some sort of progressive synth work. It's really just plain nice. And Waking Up, the finale here. Talk about progressive synth work, there's a whole lot more of it on this track. She really does pull it off well, too, and this is far from some, John Carpenter eerie progressive synth work. No, this is much more whimsical. Colorful as well, and Natasha's vocals, honestly, come off even more ethereal because of not only that, but all the little details about this track just come together so nicely, but really satisfying conclusion to this very cinematic album from Bat for Lashes. Also, we do on the digital version of this album get an extended version of this album's title track with some extended strings, and it's nice. Yeah, certainly nothing wrong with it. Nothing to write home about either. It's nice, though. Certainly nice to have. But overall, yeah, I think this is one of Natasha's most consistent works in a while. I just can't help the feeling that I wish this was a little bit longer. I feel like that this had, 2 or 3 more really incredible tunes. This easily could have been a 9 out of 10. But we get a very short album here, 10 tracks, just about 30 minutes long. And, some of the later neoclassical nods don't come off nearly as good as At Your Feet. But overall, very consistent art pop record that is absolutely heartfelt, really well produced, and just really emotional and just light on the ears and just plain nice. Yeah, for now I'm feeling a very light 8 on this album, but let me know what you all think down below. If you like the video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, friends.